Hi, I'm Rebecca,
And I'm Larissa,
and we're creatives coming alongside you to learn and grow on our journey to success.
and this is once again Broke at the Oscars.
Ooh, I like that little flair.
Ooh.
Once again.
You did a good job saying your line.
Yeah, I was like really into it.
Super smooth.
I don't know. Yeah, I had a lot of caffeine today, so.
I'm always messing up that line, even though we say it like every stinking week.
Well,
You'd
we
think
did.
I'd get it by now.
Yeah, I mean, we changed it whenever that was.
Like months ago.
Yeah, Guess it was.
Anyway, we have a guest.
We have a guest.
Joanna Ferbrache. Did I say your name right? How do I say
pretty
that?
close. Ferbrache.
Ferbrache. I wasn't sure. Ferbrache.
Ferbrache.
In the house. Not really. In the other house. In her house.
In a different
In the house across from the world. Across the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to be here and talk with us. I'm very excited to, kind of delve into your expertise a little bit on the world of acting.
Yes.
Because there's a lot. And yeah. So could you just real quick introduce yourself to our audience and kind of talk a little bit about who you are, what you do in film, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. So I am Joanna Ferbrache, and I am a professional actress slash, what was it? The master of none, but know a little bit about everything.
Oh,
yeah. Jack of all trades, master of
Jack
none.
of all trades. There we go.
Yes.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
And that's just been how I've been making my living since I graduated. So
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's
pretty-
super
pretty
cool to be
blessed.
able to say that you're like making your living off that. That's very, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we wanted to get into a little bit of the specifics of, because I know you've done like theater and film, and as you said, like, yeah, that's so cool that you've been able to kind of find consistent work and like do that, full time. Like, that's amazing. So could you talk a little bit about maybe how you got into acting? Like what was like the first role that you had, and then we'll kind of go from there in terms of like working from theater to film and all that as well.
Of course. So when I first started doing performance, it was at my church. We did a lot of the small plays where you get like that little poem that you have to perform in front of everybody, or like the Christmas pageant. I played a shepherd. It was absolutely amazing.
Nice.
They wanted to switch me to an angel, but I told them no. I like being a shepherd. I'm much more comfortable, and I have a solo.
Rebel. There you go.
Nice.
I needed my star spotlight as
That's
a shepherd.
awesome.
Wow.
So that was definitely my first big gig as a 8-year-old, 9-year-old.
Nice.
Pretty important.
Yeah, the shepherd. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So started there, and that was really all I knew for a while until I was 13 years old, and I watched a friend of mine perform in The Fiddler on the Roof. And I don't know about you, but I absolutely love that. I mean, anything that's World War II-esque for me just fascinates me. Plus, I love the music and the Jewish tradition within it all.
Yeah.
Tradition, get where I get that.
Good reference.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I watched that show and immediately was like, oh, I can perform on an actual stage, not just at my church. And so I immediately jumped into the theater world at that point in time and just kept running with it, performing as a kid. But it wasn't until, I guess, my first movie was still with the same group, Life Flight Youth Theater. And at Life Flight, we had summer workshops where we would then it was mostly theater. We would do plays where you would learn a 15-minute play, or you would learn a play in a week. But one workshop that they had was making a movie in a week. And so we wrote the script. We had someone writing the script, someone directing, and I got to be one of the actors in it. It was called, oh gosh, what was it called? The Toothpaste Incident? Something
That's
like
amazing.
that.
That's awesome.
Oh, dear.
Oh man,
Is this available on YouTube?
Yeah, can
Maybe?
we
Can
We've
you
actually got
watch
a
it?
clip of this, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh boy, roll the clip.
Yeah. I don't think you can watch it anywhere.
Okay.
I don't think we've posted it.
Okay.
Maybe someday I will have the gumption to post it. It's very, very, it's good for our age group creating it, but as an adult, it's very cringy and very interesting.
I feel like that's where every filmmaker starts, though.
Yeah.
You gotta start
You
somewhere.
gotta have a cringy vault.
You really
know?
do. If you don't have a cringy vault, you're just perfect, and that's not acceptable.
Very annoying. Yeah.
No, I'm definitely far from perfect. But one of the scenes that I'll never forget was we had the Mission Impossible theme playing, and we're just dramatically strolling. You're seeing the sun vibe on us, and then we pull up toothpaste and toilet paper, and we're about to TP somebody's house, and we just thought we were so cool. I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh, no.
Wow. That's amazing.
I will say that takes a lot of creativity. I'm kind of impressed, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, what's funny is, like, I mean, we were all beginners and trying to figure it out, but there's one scene where we did many different shots of it, but you just see me bouncing around the table because we just couldn't figure out where I was going to be. And it's one scene, but I'm just, like, one spot I'm at the corner of the table, the next spot all of a sudden I'm at the front, and I'm just like, why do we think this was a good idea? This is not
The supervisor who?
Yeah.
So that was the start. So, like, what was the trajectory after that? Where you're just like, oh my goodness, film is the way to go, and you just kind of went from there, or
turned into a valley girl and was like, yo, yeah, totally. Oh my
I'm
gosh.
moving to LA.
This is the life for me.
That's the new opening for our podcast. We're just going to play that at the beginning with some music underneath.
This is LA.
So
I'm
great.
moving to LA. This is the life for me.
Wow.
Yes, please. That will just be the background music. I'll make a full theme song with "This is the life of me."
Oh boy.
I can't. All right, and that's our podcast for today. Ladies and
Thanks for
gentlemen.
listening, everyone. We're not going to be able to top that, so
Pretty much.
might as well go home
That
now.
is.
Thank
That's
you,
all, folks.
Joanna.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
man.
Oh.
Wow.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
moving on. Yeah. So, like, what was kind of like? Did you go to school for film or for theater, or whatever, or what did you do after high school?
So then, what ended up happening was that come senior year of high school, I'm asked the all important question of what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I truly had no idea. I was just like, well, I guess I enjoy acting, so I think this is the way I need to go because there's nothing else I really want to do. Might as well just jump in. And so I told my parents that that's what I wanted to study was theater. But they were like, okay, that's cool if that's where God leads and that's where you end up going. However, for school, we want you to study something that can work as a backup.
Mm.
And so I ended up going to Clark Summit University in Pennsylvania, near Scranton. Clark Summit is. Yeah, the office.
Nice.
But I studied early childhood education, and I was in that major until my junior year, second semester, junior year, first semester. And I had been performing in theater shows at my school, as well as performing back in Missouri whenever it was summer break or Christmas break. And it got to the point in time where I'm approaching the student teaching, and I realized how impractical getting a degree in early child education was for me because I wasn't planning on using it. As a backup, getting a bachelor's in education, you have to keep up with accreditation and you have to know the state that you're working at, and it doesn't provide a lot of room for traveling except during the summertime. And so I realized that this wasn't the place for me to be. I could get my associates because I already had the credits for it, but then I really felt God pulling me towards communications theater. And so I switched my major, and everyone, my education professors, my theater professors, all my friends, my family, everyone except for one person who didn't really know me, but who was like one of the heads up of the education system, were saying, finally, this is what we want you to do. We will miss you in the education department, but we know that you belong in theater. Or on the theater side, being like, thank goodness you're coming to this side because we know that this is where you belong. And then I had a conversation with my dad in the kitchen, and he told me that, if this is where God wants you to be, you have our full support. And so that's where I ended up going, and I ended up having to graduate a year later. But I really learned a lot about myself and about what I want to be as a Christian within the performing world. But I didn't really learn what it meant to be as an actor in the world of theater and film until 2015. I moved to Alaska, and it was right after I graduated. Technically, I didn't go to the graduation ceremony. I ended up graduating a week early so I could start my gig in Alaska, and then it's just been going ever since.
Wow.
Awesome.
What was your first gig in Alaska? What was that?
It was technically my second professional gig, but the first one in just like the continuous motion of acting. In Alaska, I was working at what's called Legends and Lies, a bartending experience. And it was a bit of a reenactment of the gold rush of 1898, as well as kind of showing what saloon life would have been like in that time frame.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, I got to play a lot of music and talk a bit about history. And it was not my favorite gig in the entire world, but I learned a lot. And I also, the people were amazing, and I absolutely love Alaska, and I'm hoping to go back again next year.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. So in terms of like that job and maybe, even some others that you've had since graduating, would you say that like the fact that you got a degree in acting, was that helpful for you? And like, is it helpful like through connections, or like how did that work out? Like if someone's pursuing acting, would you recommend that they go to school and like get a degree? Or could you speak to that?
It depends on what they're wanting to do. If you want to do any form of education, and I mean children's theater or traveling internationally with performing, yes, I think a degree is very, very helpful. I got to go to Korea because I had a degree.
Wow.
I would not have been able to come here if I didn't have a bachelor's. But if you're a person who just wants to jump into film locally, and locally could mean statewide, sometimes it can mean international. You don't necessarily need a degree for that. But if you're very one-minded with where you want to go and it's just Broadway and that's it, I don't think you need a degree. Depending on what school you go to, you may be able to build connections. For me, going to university allowed me to build connections of places to stay, rather than connections of jobs. Granted, I also went to a very small school where most of the folks who went there I don't know if they necessarily planned on ever making acting their full-time profession, but they have had different paths that they're going on now. But I mean, I don't regret going to school at all. I made a lot of friends, and I think school can be a great opportunity to grow. It's not necessary in the acting profession unless you're going into anything educational, but it really can't hurt. If I would not have gotten a degree, I wouldn't have gotten probably a third of the jobs I've gotten.
Wow.
But 2/3 of my jobs, I would say, I could have gotten without a degree. No problem.
I feel like we've gotten some really good feedback for college, which I feel like most of the time everyone's like, forget college. And so it's like, it's good to hear that other side. It's like, and even if you don't go to college because it's going to further your acting career, you go because it's like, I don't know, it's kind of a helpful step in your young adult growth and maturity. Sometimes it can be helpful and you gain a lot of friends there. Anyway, I enjoyed college.
Yeah, and you truly never know what kind of connections you're going to make.
Yeah.
As well as what you will learn.
Right.
I mean, truly, I learned more about the industry outside of college,
Mm-hmm.
but still, like, it has affected a lot of the jobs I've gotten. I mean,
Yeah.
even the 3 years I was in early child education, that has also gotten me a lot of children's theater. It got me the job in Korea.
Nice.
And now I'm not saying that, of course, that's not the only reason why I got it. Wasn't like, oh, degree, check, you're hired.
Yeah.
But
Right,
I wish it was
right.
that easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it still is one of those things that gives me a step up above other people who are also competing for the job.
Right. Right. You're like, I have actual like training in like dealing with young kids and like understanding safety and protocol and like how to talk to kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious,
Or
when you
people,
were in college, were you like, what does like going to college as an actor look like? Are you taking like acting classes, singing, dancing, and then also beyond that, have you like continued taking acting classes afterwards, or like how has that all worked out?
For me, it was an interesting set of classes because I didn't study acting. I studied
Okay.
communications theater. So
Okay.
so I got a lot more of the communication side. You get media, you get learning about tech theater. You learn about. I took one acting class in college, but again, it was more of an overview of a lot of different things. I took a Shakespeare class. That was pretty awesome. I got to go to Canada and watch the festival up that way.
Nice.
And
Nice.
watched Othello.
Nice.
Such a beautiful show. And
Oh man.
even being in college level theaters, it was amazing. I mean, it was I don't like comparing and being like it's a step above this or a level below that, because honestly, community theater, college theater, it can be professional level, and professional level theater can technically have the quality of a lower theater. It doesn't necessarily, and I think that the same goes for films. Just because you're paid does not mean it's necessarily professional quality. But yeah, and so I would say that I got a nice overview of a lot of different aspects of theater going for communications, but it was also outside. Like I learned about radio and I learned about photography.
Nice. Yeah.
So that was really, really nice. And honestly, that's probably what I would recommend more so.
Okay.
My only regret of not going for a musical theater type of degree is I didn't get a lot of dance training at school.
Yeah.
All of my dance training came from me finding dance instructors and then taking separate classes outside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then outside of college, I've taken a couple voice lessons. One is with Jordan Scott Gilbert. He is a Christian Broadway producer in New York City.
Wow.
I don't believe he does the producing as much anymore. I could be mistaken, so don't quote me on that. But he is an amazing person to know. He also teaches excellently. And so I took voice lessons from him for a bit. And if anybody's wanting voice lessons, go to Jordan Scott Gilbert. I recommend him.
Nice plug.
And and then I took one acting class, which was a film acting class in Missouri.
Nice.
And again, I only took it for a short time because for me, I find that classes aren't what help me. What really helps me is hands-on experience. The classes give a brief foundation, and then I learn just from hands-on work.
Yeah.
But other people learn better by taking classes, and so you really just have to know what works best for you. I mean, just like when applying for a job, you know your type, whether and you know how people look at you age-wise even. That goes the same for classes. It goes the same for college. It depends on what best helps you. What are you hoping to gain?
Right.
I would say it all varies on the person.
Yeah. I think you're right about classes. Like it's a tough thing to navigate, because at one point they're super necessary. And I think for all beginners, like if you don't have any experience really, like it's helpful to just, especially a film acting class, because it's like it teaches you more than just how to act. It's like more practical, like understanding your framing and stuff like that. It can be, if those classes teach that kind of stuff, that's what's like super important too. But like taking too many classes can be damaging, because everybody's like, this is the way. No, this is the way. Especially if you take from different teachers. I think it's actually really cool to take from different classes, because like maybe if you took a Meisner here, you took a more, open-ended approach here. I did a class that was very like non-method. It was very like, it was based on like cold reading, like very instinctual. And that was really cool. And then another class which like taught from a book, which taught a specific technique, but very, again, like very not like, it wasn't like a Meisner Stanislavski. And I think it was helpful to have kind of like, oh, okay, I can take pieces of whatever works for me and kind of make my own way of doing things. Like you said, like it's really about what works for you, and like the experience in the end, whatever helps you get better is what matters. So,
and I love what you said about just you take little pieces of other methods and then you comprise your own method. Yeah. And I think that's the best and safest way. I mean, if Meisner works for you, Stanislavski works for you, their specific methods, perfect. But there's almost something, let me use the word magical, in creating your own type of acting and finding out what connects to you the best. I mean, I personally don't like connecting my past stories to figuring out how to get into a character, but you give me an emotion. You tell me you are devastated, and all of a sudden snaps, and then I'm able to connect to that character. But if you try to make me think of a situation that is similar to something from my past, I'm going to immediately pull back, because no, my character, someone to me, is very different. And if I'm trying to put my own story into it, then it's going to distract me. And then, so it's really about figuring out, how do I connect to the character? Is it, is it relationships? Is it something that they say? Is it a tone? Is it emotions? Is it physicalizations? Is that the word?
Yeah. Physicalities.
Physicalities. There we go. English, man.
I liked your word better, though.
Physicalization.
Yeah. That's a good word.
Physicalization. I don't know.
Physicalities. There we go. That's a much easier word to say, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, just figuring out how do you create characters? And I never realized it until very recently that it's the emotions that immediately are what send me into a character. And as long as a director and producer or whoever it is that's giving me those directions at that point, as long as they know what kind of emotions they're looking for, then that helps me. And if not, then we need to have a conversation, because sometimes directors will have very different ways of how to talk to their actors. And so then having a communication to figure out, okay, this is how we can collaborate and get to this point in time in the character with emotions or physicalities or whatever it may be.
Do you ever spend time with a director, like basically defining a vocabulary? Because sometimes like people use words to kind of mean one thing, but it might, like, you might interpret that as something else. So like, do you ever have that type of conversation with a director where it's like, when I say this word, this is what I mean? Or is it more based on like you getting to know the director and maybe just working with them? And how does that work?
Cool question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't know if I've specifically had conversations about, well, actually, specifically auditions. I've had conversations with directors where they'll say, okay, now give me this. And then I have to do clarifications just to make sure. And sometimes I think I hit it spot on. And then there's other times where I still don't think I've given the director what they're wanting. And in audition situations, sometimes you have conversations. Sometimes it's like, all right, move. You either give it to me or you don't. But
And-
with Shakespeare,
yeah.
But with Shakespeare, yes, definitely a lot of conversations. I'm right now in Romeo and Juliet, and yeah, I'm super
What do you
excited.
play?
And
Who do you play?
I play Juliet.
Wow.
Nice.
I'm excited.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
But we're doing Shakespeare in the Park, and for it,
I'm coming.
even better. And so for it, our next rehearsal, it's going to be Romeo, myself, and I think Mercutio is also going to be there. And the three of us are just mostly going to discuss language and discuss the characters. And I think that's a great starting point. If you have the time to do that, is to have your first rehearsal really being about who am I? What
Who
am I looking for? Yeah.
Different place, different place.
601.
That could be the name of this podcast. Who am
Yeah.
I?
Oh.
Who am I? You were talking about conversation. I think that's very cool to have a conversation with your people about like what they feel about things and how you understand one another. I think that's communication again.
And not only to help with like clear communication, but also like healthy communication. If there's something that's like, hey, don't say this to me, like don't like you know, especially depending on the character and like what's happening, like that can be part of the conversation about setting boundaries, which is a whole other conversation.
It really is. I mean,
that get into,
that's similar to the physicality, because I learned in, you know, in classes or whatever, you have to be also on podcasts. I think I was listening to Audrey Helps Actors, and she was talking about that. It's like you need to be very clear of like where your boundaries are physically wise, and make sure that you're comfortable, or that, you know, you're willing to work very carefully with somebody to make sure that you're both okay.
Yeah.
And knowing also, especially with kissing scenes,
Especially
knowing when are you going to do them so that you don't take people off guard. I really like having rehearsal kisses before, unless your character is supposed to have that moment where you've never kissed this individual before and you're having that bit of suspense / what's it going to be like, then it's kind of nice to save it for that first shot, so it's even more realistic. But if you're supposed to be pretty chill with it, like you're a boyfriend girlfriend or you're a married couple, understanding just how the other person feels and what they anticipate and expect, and even just having conversations about what does this kiss mean, or what does this hug mean, because truly any kind of physical affection can mean a lot of things. It can have you guys seen Studio C?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the one where oh gosh, what's her name, the blonde
Mallory,
where she's talking about the different forms of how you know about a hug, where it's like this one means friends forever, friends forever.
Friends forever.
Yeah.
This is an amazing reference, by the way.
Really? That's such a good.
Thank you.
That was a good one.
But like knowing your character's feelings, like is this a kiss that is seductive? Is it a kiss that is you're great and I appreciate you? Is this a kiss that is, oh my gosh, I'm head over heels over you?
Yeah.
And that's going for hugs as well.
Yeah.
What is the comfort level of your character? And so having those conversations with your co-star or with whoever you're involved with in the scene, you know, understanding those relationships, I think is absolutely amazing. I did one film. We're still in the pre-production process, but we just had some great conversations with the director and then with myself and the co-star, just trying to chat through who are we? How do we know each other? What is our relationship besides the stereotypical boyfriend-girlfriend, which is what the script talks about. But understanding how do we feel about each other? My character has gone through an accident where I've lost my hearing. And trying to cope with that and think about how would I interact with someone who I have known before I lost my hearing, and now we are still in a relationship, but now I am different. And so trying to understand even like how I would physically connect with this individual? How would I emotionally connect with this individual? And sometimes I think having those conversations and sharing exactly how you feel is great. And then there's other things where maybe your character would never share that information with the other person. Sometimes keeping those to yourself is the best way to continue with that character and to really keep it real for yourself as well as for whoever you're playing it with.
Mm-hmm. Sort of along the lines of like having conversations with the director, do you ever talk about because like there's this idea of like for actors, there's normally you have like your best take is for some people it's their first take, and for some people it's like their fifth take. And so do you ever have conversations with the director about that, especially when it comes to like kissing scenes or something where it's like you want to save that surprise moment for when you're filming? Do you talk about like, hey, we should do the close-up first because the first time we kiss is when you're going to get that? Do you have those conversations with the director, or is that more on them to kind of figure all that out and you're just focused on like preparing for the acting?
I don't think I've ever had those conversations before.
Okay.
It's always been trying not to think of numbers. I mean, my goal is always just to be able to do it in one take and then have just another one for safety.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is my preference as well, because I feel like for me, the first time is probably my best.
Okay.
And a lot of it just because it is truly fresh. It is something truly where it is my first time as a character and as myself as the actor.
Right.
But I mean, film is unpredictable. You never know when the tripod gets wonky or when the camera just wasn't in focus or the lighting was slightly off. It could be anything. The sound equipment didn't work. A billion things could go wrong.
Right.
And so as an actor, it's my responsibility to not decide I am only a one-take wonder. Anything after that cannot do. That's not practical.
No.
I mean, and so even though for me personally, being the hardest critique on my own acting probably than anybody else, I feel like usually my first take is the best. The goal is to make sure that they're all equal rating. They're all just as good as any other take, whether you're doing it from distance or whether you're doing it close up. Just trying to live in the moment every single time. And it's the same for theater. I mean, theater, you're going through the whole story from beginning to end, sometimes hundreds of times.
Right.
I've done shows, I don't even know, I did in 2016, I was on tour with 3 different shows for a summer. And with just one of those 3, we performed almost 100 times in about 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was just 1 out of the 3 shows.
Wow.
And you had to make sure it was fresh every single time because the audience was new. The audience was experiencing for the first time, and so you wanted it new for them. And that's the same for film acting when you're doing a scene every single time. You gotta think of it as brand new. You've never done it before. Not easy, but it can, depending on the scene, it can be a lot of fun, especially when it's like running scenes and you're like, all right, 100th time for my workout.
Or you're running through a field in a wedding dress, maybe. It's like specific example.
Funny thing is that I have done that. How did you know, Rebecca?
I mean, I don't know.
She
It's
did
just
do
like
that.
I was just like visualizing you doing that. I don't know. Yeah.
That was one of the best scenes in the entire world.
Oh my goodness. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
So
we are talking about a specific thing, friends.
Yes.
Who are listening. Actually, you can find it. I think it's for free. You can see it on Vimeo. I think it's on Vimeo. It's called Reflection. Yep.
That's where the 3 of us met.
Yeah, it is. That is where we met. Yeah.
It was a super fun project. Yeah.
It was a blast.
Yes. Oh my word. Yeah, I got to I was gaffer. Yeah, I was gaffer on that. I was like, what was I? What did I do? No, yeah. I was like either just I was gaffer, and it was all black and white too. So it was filmed. So it was lit for black and white, to be colored black and white. I mean, obviously we shot in color, I think, but Yeah.
Super
Really,
fun
really cool.
project.
Yeah. Okay, so kind of moving along into how theater translates to film. And I think you've kind of touched on this, like doing theater has kind of almost trained you to be more consistent on your film takes. And I think that's very valuable. Sometimes it's like, I feel like sometimes I'm like, I want to experience it new every time. So every take is going to be a little different, which is cool because I mean, now you have either you get better each take or you have something a little different for the editor to play with. But I think, I think having a consistency throughout is really, really valuable. And filmmakers, I think a lot of filmmakers really, like as far as when they get into editing, they very much like consistency, especially in physicality. It's like you keep using that one hand. Just keep that one hand. If this hand doesn't do anything, you do not use that hand ever.
Amen.
And I think I've probably done that where I've like swapped hands and I was like, I swapped directions on that one. Sorry, I turned the other way versus the other way.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It was like one of those one
take.
take long shots where it's like they can only use one option anyway, so they just choose which direction they want me to turn, It's like,
that's fine. Yes.
But yeah, so moving along into more not pros and cons,
just like the differences.
Yeah, similarities and differences between theater and film that you've found, and how it might help
and
or
maybe
hinder you.
Even specifically, like how do you prepare differently for
that's a good
like when you
question.
get a theatrical role versus when you get a role for a film?
So with theater, the biggest thing I love about theater is you're telling a story from point A to point B in one setting. Or one sitting.
Yeah.
And so you actually get to live through those characters' experiences. Sometimes there might be a 2-year gap, a couple-month gap, and you have to account for that mentally. But otherwise, you're walking their footsteps the whole time. While with a film, you could do the end scene first, and then do the first scene last.
Yeah.
So then you have to really account what happened in between all these different scenes.
Yeah. Where's my placement in the arc currently?
Yeah. What am I processing right now? Especially if it's an emotional scene, trying to remember this has happened, this has not happened. But then with film, it's so much more realistic. You're focused on the eyes, you're focused on the internal emotions. While with theater, you have to think about making those emotions bigger, using your body to express yourself rather than just your face. You have to think about the projection of your voice and that you can't have whisper scenes. There's no such thing as whispering. There's the stage whisper.
Yes.
And sometimes, especially if you're not mic'd, you have to think less about the emotion in your voice and use the emotion of your body, because you can only do so much with your voice when you're trying to make sure people just need to hear what I'm saying 1,000 seats back.
Right.
And a lot of times, I think we got to see Hello, Dolly at the Fox Theater here in Atlanta. And it was one of the I think that was my first real Broadway show that I've seen, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Outside of like seeing plays and musicals in college. But we got to see, and there was this one part where it was just, I think it was Mr. Vandegilder, and it was just this little solo before like an intermission. And like you could tell, no, it was her. It was Dolly. And you could tell like there was a brokenness to her and there was like a sadness there, but she projected it, like it was fully projected, but like you could still tell the emotion. And it was really, really a very interesting experience, because you're like, she's just this, we're at the very, very top, so it's the cheap seats, so she's all the way down and she's just a tiny little person in the spotlight, and you can't really see, she's just very still, and yet we can hear her and you can tell it's sad. And it's like, I don't know, it's very, very cool, I think, what theater can do, even if you're yelling, the stillness versus when you're busy, that dichotomy of like what you can do to your voice. Of course, she was mic'd, so
yeah,
it was a little more
mic'd helped.
Yeah, I'm sure Shakespeare had some difficulties with that, but
Yeah. But then also what I love about theater is, I mean, you get to see everything. What the actors see, the audience sees.
Yeah.
Unless you have a corner seat and then then you struggle a little bit. But in general, you all see the same thing.
Yeah.
While with film, the director decides what you see as an audience member. And so you know that what's being recorded is what the audience is going to see. But on a stage, I could be the person picking flowers in the background who doesn't have any lines.
Right.
And yet someone in an audience, whether it's 5 people or 5,000 people,
they're all watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their eyes are on the flower girl. And you just never know.
Yeah. It's so interesting to like break away from the main talent and just like watch the other side characters in an ensemble piece. And it's like, what's everybody doing?
Yeah. Especially in theater for someone who's done it like 100 times, you know, if you have 100 performances or whatever, like, I don't know if, like the little things, maybe you've like, oh, well, let me come up with a character arc or something, you know, because if you're doing it 100 times, like, gotta keep yourself entertained, you know.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, okay, first I'm going to pick this one. Oh, let's change it up. Let's pick this one first.
Today I'm picking a red flower because I'm angry.
This is the exact psychology that goes behind my flower picking.
So great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool being able to be a part of 2 very different worlds that, I mean, the similarities is that you're still creating a character. And the creation of the character, I don't think there's any difference for me between theater and film.
Okay.
It's still the developing of the character, and figuring out the relationships with other people. The biggest difference, and it's more in the rehearsal process than it is in the actual memorizing of lines or the homework that I have within creating a character. The rehearsal is where all of a sudden I will be able to play around with different things, being able to figure out, okay, so the camera's going to be here, so this is going to be the focus of it. Or this is where the audience is, so I want to make sure my back's not to the audience. I'm going to cheat out more.
Right.
But what I didn't realize is that the expression of like cheating out, that is both with film and theater, because with film, you have to cheat to the cameras.
Right.
With theater, you cheat to the audience because that is your camera.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities. And I think from my experience, I would say there's more similarities than differences with the 2. The biggest difference is just how big you have to be.
Right.
And how you have to think about people's eyes always being on you once you're on stage. Once you're on stage, you can think of it as you're in the camera.
You're in the world.
And then with filming, even, I mean, you could be filming a scene where your back's to the camera, and then unless you want to help your co-star or whoever it is, you technically don't have to do it full out because your back's to them.
Yeah.
But in theater, I mean, if your back's to the audience, you have to make sure at least your physicalization is still very real to that character because it's what's being seen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Do you like try and keep film and theater separate in the sense of like if you're working on a show, would you like want to be working on a film at all, or do you try and like just do one at a time to kind of help you separate like how you're thinking through that character and like I don't know how you're acting, I guess, or does it not matter? Like you could do both at the same time and just kind of flip that switch.
Yeah, I think I mean I've done both at the same time.
Okay.
Even now, I mean I'm working on a Shakespeare play. I'm in the midst of looking at some musicals that I might be working on in November. I am working on films, doing voiceovers.
Okay.
I personally like to do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
I think it's a great challenge, and I love every medium so much. There's just something new to learn and something new to discover in each of them. And I'm also a person who loves to experiment with different characters. I like to play the psychopath. I like playing the crazy person. I love playing the ingenue, playing the old mother, playing just the boring character, whatever that may be. But just bringing to life so many different people people who sometimes are like me, sometimes who are not like me.
Yeah.
And I like to look at it as, have you ever seen the movie The Host?
Yes. Unfortunately.
Okay. But for me, that's actually how I like to describe how I get into character.
Okay.
Is where it's still your body, but yet there's someone else who enters inside you, and it's whatever character I'm playing. And like, for those who have not seen The Host, it's basically an alien is inside you and controls what you do, and what your emotions, or at least what your emotions are shown as. And that's how I like to view character development, is for Juliet. Juliet enters inside me, and so it's Juliet who controls my movements. She controls my reactions. She controls how I say things. Joanna's still there,
right?
But it's Juliet who has the full control. And I feel like I'm getting on my own rabbit trail.
That's another great analogy. You just have a lot of just great analogies. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Why? Thank you. But I just think it's a great way to think of a character. It's not me who controls the character, and I think that's a lot of things with actors is they get into their own heads way too much.
Yeah.
But you have to say welcome in, whether you're an evil character or a kind character, whatever it may be. Yeah. But then you also have to be able to say you're not welcome anymore, and then being able to step aside. And it is, I would say, acting can be a very dangerous profession. Yeah. Because it can really take control of people's lives. And I would say that every character I've played, there's always been a little something that I've taken. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. And having to recognize that and being able to say, okay, I do need to separate myself from this. I have to work through something that never used to be an issue, but now is an issue because of X, Y, and Z. But yet, I don't know, that also adds its own thrill of being like, I don't know what I will learn or what I will take away from this character, and be able to continue to mold myself as a person.
That's really cool. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
That's very, very cool. I think I haven't done as much as you have, but I have gotten to play Shelby in Stale Magnolias.
I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, which was dealing with pregnancy and having kids, and later on I've done auditions for plenty of people with like young mothers or somebody struggling with like thoughts of abortion or loss of child or whatever, and then I got to play a short film where I had lost a child. And earlier on in my life, during college and after, pregnancy and like the ideas of childbirth and everything were like one of my greatest fears. And so actually like having to deal with those kinds of things and like step into a character and really understand why, the character loves children and the idea of having kids, and like that actually helped me as a person like see the reward and like the beauty of that whole pregnancy, childbirth, having kids, as a person for myself. And I'm like, I think that was a very big blessing from God that I learned something. I'm a better person because I was able to play those characters. And I think but of course on the other side, like you're saying, playing a psychopath, you have to be very careful that you're not learning to be a psychopath. And like, you can't actually go kill people, Larissa. Yeah. No, that's wrong, Kyle.
Bad idea.
Kills people, Kyle.
Is that another Studio C reference?
No, it's some stupid YouTube reference.
Oh, okay.
It's a thing on YouTube. Don't watch it, or do if you like some gore. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. I remember I got to play, I think her name's Nellie in, oh my gosh, what's it called? What's the story? Oh, Jekyll and Hyde. There we go.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So I played Nellie in Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
And she's a prostitute. And she sings a song about being a girl of the night and how it's not her choice. It was something that she had to do in order to save her daughter and keep her daughter alive. And it really opened up my mind to realizing that looks are deceiving, and you can't judge a book by its cover. No matter what the person is, I can't just assume, oh, you're a prostitute, so this is your story. This is why you're doing it. Or you work at Denny's and this is your story. You know, like it could be anything. But judgment is such a stupid thing. We really can't assume things based off of what we see. And playing that role really brought that into my mind, about how I don't want to assume something based off of a belief, based off of a look or a conversation about anything, politics, religion. I'm trying to think of like the testiest subjects that are very personal. But yeah, I mean, the only person who has the right to judge is God, and that's because He is the only one who knows all, and He is the only one who understands. And I wish that, and I'm saying wish meaning for myself included, but that we'd all really consider that and think about how are we looking at other people. If we could just take the moment to step into someone else's shoes, and I think that's such a cool thing about being an actor, is I get to do that every day. I get to learn something new about somebody else. And I think if more people took a second to just relate to someone who's not themselves and step into someone's life who is very opposite of them, not finding someone who agrees with them on every single point, but someone who maybe you agree with, maybe you don't, but just trying to look at the world through their eyes. I think it would help our society out immensely. Sorry, not to get too political on this podcast.
No, that's good.
No.
So basically,
really great.
We need to just have like a day where everyone plays another character.
Yeah. Like today, it's like
world.
high school debate. It's like you're assigned something that you have to argue this point,
or
even
career
if you
day
believe
or something.
the opposite.
It's
like that. It's like you have to act like you believe
like
this thing, even if
and
you
then
don't.
like you see the other side.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah,
and I mean, like it goes back to thinking of Jesus and how He told us that we need to be more like children in order to follow Him. And it's because they could look through His eyes. They have this unquestionable faith. And then on top of that, I feel like they were able to step outside their own lives. Children love to pretend. Children love to imagine. And I think if we can continue to do that, both from like a spiritual aspect as well as a creative aspect, it just makes us a lot more, helps us to function better as humans, and it helps us better to communicate as well as to relate to other people around us.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what the medium is all about. I mean, half of it is entertainment and all of it is really entertainment, but the beauty about, film, television, poetry, singing, dancing, everything is communicating something, and we're all sharing our message, sharing our worldview. And I think it's very, very cool that we can share a worldview that matters, that says, human life is valuable, respect one another, golden rule, the truths of the gospel, God's love for us. So that's I think that's very, very, it's very applicable. It's so cool that we get to do that in such an artistic medium that gets seen by so many people. Hopefully, if we do it right. But
and it's cool that it's kind of like it's kind of like a cycle of like if you play a character that helps you, like you're saying, to understand maybe some people in the real world and what they're going through, and then as you like get to know people in the real world and get to like understand them better, that helps you to act better and to play these characters better. So it's kind of like a really cool cycle. It's really neat.
That's very cool.
Well, on that note, I know there's like so many other things that we could get into in terms of acting. I mean, it's an endless subject almost, but
truly.
But we do need to, for the sake of time, start wrapping it up. But Joanna, thank you so much for taking time to be here with us.
Yeah.
And appreciate you sharing your expertise and your excellent analogies.
Yes.
They've been
you.
great. Would just like to give you an opportunity right now if you wanted to share where people can see your work. So whether that's like social media or if you have a film that's coming out, or I know you mentioned you're doing Shakespeare right now. So yeah, anything along those lines.
Go see her Shakespeare in the park.
Yes.
Yes, Clarksville, Missouri. So I mean, you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Joanna Ferbrache. That's where you'll probably see the most up-to-date things of what's going on in my life. I also have a YouTube channel. This is not something that, it's not something I would consider my professional acting Joanna personality.
Yeah.
This is I am tired of COVID and I want to not feel so depressed anymore. We will not get into all of that.
Yep.
But I wanted to just make something that was fun and something where it's like, okay, where can I find little pieces of joy in the midst of struggle?
Mm-hmm.
And so I made this channel called A Cup of Joe for 1 minute, where I have over 100 videos.
Nice.
Over 100 videos, about 1 minute long. Some are a little longer, some are a little shorter. But they're just little quirky things on there that I've gotten a lot of great feedback from, and they make me laugh, and I know that they make some other people laugh. So
that's amazing.
That's awesome.
I'm going to go watch that.
That's so great.
A Cup of Joe.
A Cup of Joe for 1 minute.
For
you gotta
1
add
minute.
that or you will not find my channel.
Okay. Okay.
That's awesome.
That's so good.
Very cool.
But yeah, check it out.
That's so good.
Check
That's
all
awesome.
the Facebook and Instagram, and
Nice.
questions. Let me
Great.
know. I'm happy to chat.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Wow. We're becoming the same person.
I know. I know. It's like you'll say something and I'll say the exact same thing.
Yeah. At the same
Half
time.
a second after.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you work on a podcast together. You know we got you know
you
each
do,
other forever.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
do
I need to-
54 episodes.
This is 54. Episode 54.
Woo!
We've made strides, ladies and gentlemen.
We have. Please don't go back and actually do this, but if you were to go back and listen to our first episode, it is
I don't think I have listened to our first episode.
Yeah.
But I've listened to some of our earlier ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the best.
Yep.
They're not the worst, though.
That's fair.
There's some
That's
fun
fair.
times
Yeah,
to be
that
had
is totally fair.
back in the archives.
Yeah. Yeah, deep in the archives. So
That's
if
what
you ever
matters.
have 53 hours or 54, they're not all an hour long.
If you're driving to
If
Alaska.
you have 50 hours that you're trying to kill, go listen to all our podcasts.
While you drive.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Oh, man.
But
well,
on that note, thank you to everyone who has listened and
Yes.
watched.
for 54 episodes.
oof,
That's
yeah.
insane.
It's really...
Thank you for being here. And if you're not, if nobody is listening to this episode, that's probably for
Yeah, I scream into the void every
not
day,
really.
so this isn't any different. So, yeah, that's fine.
No, it's been so valuable, and
Yeah.
we've learned a lot through this podcast, and we get to talk with people like you, Joanna.
Yeah.
So it's so refreshing.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me be a part. This
Yes.
was a lot of fun, and it was great to see you guys again. I haven't seen you
You too.
a
Years.
zillion years.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been years.
Uh,
Need to get together again.
we need to
Make
make
a
another
movie.
film. Yeah.
Yes. All right, come on, guys. Let's make
Go.
something soon.
Go.
All
All right, and with that,
Awesome.
see you on set.